see. All right. Commissioner, looks like we are recording. It is now November 15th, our bi-weekly video. So it seems like forever and a day that we were in front of the staff, and I know some of our breakfast club and Sunday night diners have missed us. So likewise, I think you've missed communicating to the staff.
I have. I know every week is a lot. And we also heard you. A lot of you said that we don't have to watch the video if we look at the memo. So we're going to try to be as brief as possible in the memo so you have a chance to at least engage with us, because we know, 8 months of this being prolonged in this environment is pretty hard.
You bet. So we did have something really great this past couple of weeks. We had the mentor-mentee closing ceremony through the Academy for Workforce Development. Just another great event and group of mentees that came through.
Yeah, that was a great ceremony. We said our goodbyes to Louise Montemuro, who has kind of taken over the helm of that program for the last couple of years. And if you don't know, Louise is retiring, and we know that she has had many positions across the department. So we will definitely miss Louise. And that mentoring program is something that is near and dear to my heart. Deputy Commissioner Lilly, when she was at the Academy, along with the new Academy Director, Tracy Davis, have really built that up to national prominence. And I've always found it to be just a tremendous way to connect with staff. Before I was in this position, I've had 7 mentees, and all of them have given so much more to me than I have to them. So I just love participating in that program year after year. And they just had their closing with another cohort of connections. So it was great.
I think you also challenged the group with a saying that you typically do mention to groups, which is very clearly, who's next?
Who's next? Next up, having a social worker in this seat is a unique thing. Darlene Dunbar was the social worker before she was the commissioner. And so when you think about the roles that we've played within this department, you had Sue Hamilton, who was in the legal division in the department. So when you come through the ranks, there's something special about being in this seat. And I can't wait for who's next.
There you go. So, Commissioner, I'm not unlike other weeks or bi-weekly videos that we've done. There's a lot happening around us. While at the same time, we also want to celebrate the strength and resiliency of our staff and the connections we have with our community providers and our community partners. Can you talk a little bit?
So yeah, just as we've tried to navigate the pandemic, our providers are doing the same, and they are really leading with the public health focus and recognizing that it's important to be very mindful of when they conduct in-person contacts. And so with our providers, particularly with our credentialed providers, we do want to make sure that we have exhausted all of our contracted slots, and again, leading with that public health lens first. But our providers are our partners. They are right in there with us, making sure that as we plan with kids and families towards reunification or whatever that interaction might be, or whatever the service that's being delivered, that we're doing that in concert with them. And, they have been tremendously wonderful partners with us through the pandemic, and I expect that to continue beyond.
Yep. And this video also does serve to clarify that we are utilizing credentialed and RAP providers as well, long as the situation on a case-by-case basis is assessed via the triage process, and are assessing and practicing fiscal responsibility. So from both our contracted providers who are open and our credentialed and RAP providers who can be used on a case-by-case basis, we believe those are the supports that our families and children need for those individuals and families, obviously, that we're servicing.
That's right. It's the case planning and talking through what is needed, talking through, are there ways that this particular service can be met with the contract that we have. And, if we do need to use a credentialed provider for something that's unique or something that can't be met in a slot, are we all leading with that public health lens and making sure that, we're keeping ourselves safe as well as our provider partners safe and the families that we're servicing. So all of that has to go into the planning a little bit differently than we typically would plan, but, leading with the science, leading with fiscal responsibility, and leading with partnership.
Yeah. And another example of that partnership will be, boy, this coming Friday when we celebrate Connecticut Adoption Day, where I think it's now over 25, if not more, children are actually going to achieve permanency.
Yeah, that's the feel-good day, typically in juvenile court. And because the courts have gone remote, it's going to be different this year. But it doesn't make it any less feel-good for those kids that are achieving permanency in their forever families. And I know adoption is near and dear to your heart from a personal standpoint in terms of your family. And I understand that, as we are in this particular COVID environment, you want to try to make that as special as possible. You had the experience this week with hearing from one of our offices as they talked through one of those situations, right?
Boy, I sure did, and I'm going to do everything I can not to get choked up in reciting.
Oh my goodness, you're such a softy kid.
First of all, you hit on the head. I've eight adopted brothers and sisters, so certainly I've lived the work even before walking through the DCF doors. But thank you to Chris Lau and Donna Maitland Ward and Maritza Velez for the invitation to go to the Stay Home, Go Home, Find Home Permanency CQI team in Region 4. Just beautiful work.
You forgot Rose. You said all three of the other leaders.
We can never forget Rose. Rose
right.
is here.
Go ahead, tell me about it.
Just beautiful work that was done in the region, and they reviewed 3 adoptions that are going, actually one that's going to happen, 2 that have already been completed. They actually had some of the adoptive parents in on the meeting to talk about the experiences.
Oh my gosh, that's great.
What was really great is to hear the comprehensive way we looked at permanency. It was more than just having the children adopted. When you heard the adoptive parents talk about the connections they have with the children's birth families and how they facilitated visits, and how in one of the circles, the birth mom even said to the foster mother, "I want you to raise my daughter." One of the foster parents talking about the humility that they express, knowing that they are raising a child from who is a different race than them, and their ongoing learning and wanting to do and surround her with the best possible people. And I think the best story of all was really hearing about a little guy who's going to be adopted Friday. His entire preschool class has been adopted to participate virtually. I was like, what do you say to that? It was just such a wonderful event, but I think reflective of how in depth our permanency work is, and that it's allowing a child to remain connected to the families that they will always know as their birth families, and recognizing that just because their parents, due to many circumstances, couldn't care for them, doesn't mean their parents didn't love them.
Sure.
Circumstances came in the way. So we very much look forward to Friday's Adoption Day.
We do. And I also want to give a shout out to our staff who have maintained such a level of incredible professionalism when they are conducting their court visits and whether they're testifying in hearings or trials in a remote way. I've gotten nothing but positive feedback about, just how they're presenting themselves, just as if they were in person. You're going to quiet places, you are making sure that your surroundings are confidential, and you are presenting yourself in a way as if you were physically in the courthouse. And it's been recognized that, you're doing a great job at that. And so just keep it up in terms of how we represent ourselves, how we make sure that we would do the exact same thing that we would be doing if we were in person in court, and it's the same kind of standards we expect and what we're seeing in the remote environment. So I do want to thank our staff for that, and I appreciate your reflection on that CQI meeting from Region 4, because that's just been fantastic when you think about children maintaining connections with their own cultures, with their own families, and building new families and new memories along with the connections that they will always have. So the more we can continue to create opportunities for engagement and connections between bio and foster families, and in situations that we're just talking about, and adoptive families, kids are stronger and they do well in the long term when there's this collective community of support around them.
You bet. So great day. Commissioner, at this point in our video, we offer staff the opportunity to turn it off if they do not want to hear the most recent statistics.
But before we turn it off, I do want to make sure that the folks that are on this, that are watching, that, you know, anybody who you speak to, we are in a serious public health emergency. And I want to make sure that everyone within the sound of my voice and anyone who you speak to recognizes that the work of the department continues. We continue to try to minimize our footprint. Before we get into the data, I just want to reiterate that this public health pandemic is real, and we have to not let our guard down. I know you've heard me say that before. You hear it from a lot of different directions, but when we contact trace every single staff positive, every single child that's in our care, and every single foster parent that we're notified about, lots of things that we're learning have to do with our own conduct and our own behavior regarding how vigilant we are being and the decisions that we're making. So the triage processes have to be guided by the public health metrics. We know that there are an alert system. 2/3, if not more, of the state right now is in a red or an orange alert area. So we need to pay attention to decisions that we're making for in-person contacts based on that science. We have to keep our masks on. We have to keep extra masks with us if we are having an in-person contact with someone doing the business of the agency. If they don't have one on, we have PPE available for the other person in the interaction. We have to make sure that there's cleaning supplies stocked. Our engineering and our fiscal department has made sure we have a steady supply and stockpile of PPE and cleaning supplies to ensure that, you know, in and out of cars, that we're paying attention to that. We have to bring this back to as vigilant as we were in the springtime. I think in the spring, we were concerned and we had every right to be. But as this pandemic has prolonged, we're getting a little lax, and that can't happen, because what we're finding is that the state, the country, and the world, really has to pay attention to the science. So we're going to talk to you a little bit about what the data has shown us for our DCF staff. And so if you don't want to hear that, you can log off right now. But I wanted to implore you, please, please, please continue to wear your mask, continue with your hand hygiene, continue with our social distancing. And that's all the time, consistently in and out of work, because we're finding a lot of things are happening when people are doing things outside of the scope of their job.
Okay, so the current statistics are that we have had 128 caregivers, 77 youth, and 88 staff at one point since, I believe, March, test positive for COVID-19.
So Ken, you wanted to share a picture, because I wanted to be able to show you all just some trends that we're noticing, and it underscores the cautionary tale I just shared with everyone that was on. And what you see in front of you is the chart that we have been maintaining on staff positives. And what you will see is that October eclipsed the number of staff positives we had in April. And so has November. November isn't over yet. We are at the midpoint of November, and both October and November have had more staff positives than the month of April, which was the state's peak. So I implore you all that if there's anything that I can do today to reinforce the importance of all of those things that are keeping us safe, we can. We're never going to, until the science catches up with either a vaccine or something to mitigate the pandemic itself, but we can slow it down, and our behavior can slow down this transmission. I wanted to share with you what our staff positives have looked like in a visual way to be able to illustrate just what I'm saying out loud.
Yeah. So we'll stop sharing that. Certainly sobering statistics, and again, when our contact tracing comes into play, as you indicated, almost all the time that we determine how a staff member has been infected, so to speak, it is in their personal life, not from contact on their professional capacity. So holidays are coming up. We know staff are getting tired, COVID fatigue. Need to stay strong.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, the best way to stay connected is to keep your family safe. And we know that a lot of you that are listening have lost family members, and it may be a holiday season without people that you love. And this pandemic has just ravaged our workforce. We want to continue to remain vigilant and to keep our footprint down.
All right, Commissioner, have a great couple weeks, and
All right.
we'll see you soon.
See you all in 2 weeks.